Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to those who have been on the morning sessions. I really appreciate how many people have been in most of the sessions. I love seeing all the familiar names. My name is Erin. I'm the Manager of Communications and Engagement with Cascadia Seaweed, and I am only here to introduce the amazing team from the Pacific Seaweed Growers Association before I pass it over to them. We have Mark Smith, Jennifer Woodland, Bruce Wallinger, Kennedy Nickel, and Jordan Haxwell, who are all here with their PSGA hat on. I welcome Mark to start us off. Enjoy.
Great, thanks, Erin, and welcome everybody on this sunny day, at least in Victoria. If you're tuning in Canada, happy Victoria Day long weekend. And on behalf of the seaweed growers and my colleagues here, we're looking forward to introducing what we're up to here at the Pacific Seaweed Growers Association. And Kenny, I wonder if you could fire up the So a little background about us. We formed the Pacific Seaweed Growers just a little under a year ago. We are a nonprofit society, and we have a sole mandate of growing the industry, the seaweed industry in British Columbia. And we're hoping and optimistic that you can join us on that journey. And a little background, Pacific, we are certainly based in British Columbia, but we're Pacific by design. We're all encompassing of the Pacific region. And the seaweed growers, albeit our primary focus is really around the farm and farming community. Growers to us is, we think around growing the industry in general. So again, that starts with the farm, but that will, as some of my colleagues will talk about, ties into a whole host of other areas of opportunity in and around this growing sector. So Kenny, if you could jump ahead there. Great, thank you. Just a little about me, not that you need to know much, but I'm currently the executive director and board member of the Seaweed Growers Association. I'd be remiss if I didn't state that have been tied to the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance for 5 or 6 years, where I also am tied to and lead the Foreign Trade Zone Committee on Vancouver Island. And it was through that committee over a number of years ago, when we were successful in getting the island designated as a foreign trade zone, that we retained a consulting firm to do a little homework into emerging opportunities on Vancouver Island and British Columbia from a foreign direct investment standpoint. And out of those business cases that were written, we had identified four major opportunities, of which aquaculture certainly in this area was on the list, but really it was the emerging opportunity and the subset of seaweed. And at that point in time, one of the folks on our committee was a gentleman by the name of Bill Collins, who looked at that opportunity for about 1.5 years and went, somebody really needs to do that on Vancouver Island. And hence Cascadia Seaweed was born, which as you are well know, if you'd attended some of those sessions, this is you're attending the Seaweed Days hosted and put together really by Cascadia Seaweed. So we're thrilled to be a part of that. My connectivity again to the seaweed is because of that connection into the economic activity. And once Cascadia was born and we really started to delve into those opportunities, we just knew that the only way to be successful and grow that was to form an industry association. So we've put that together. We're thrilled here. I'm going to introduce my colleagues as we roll forward here, but we certainly all have a unique skill set and some breadth and depth of knowledge where we can all bring together and hopefully assist you on your journey. If you could jump ahead there, Kennedy, that would be great. So ultimately, our mandate, we're really acting as a unified voice for this industry. You know, what does that mean? We want to be out ahead of this industry. The future, to borrow with pride from my colleague Jennifer's terminology, the future is now. You know, we're looking at this going forward into the industry, but we really, you know, the opportunity is now. We need to build up to get ready for scale on the coast here, and that just means that, you know, specifically if you're around and have been looking into the farming opportunities into this industry, there is a whole host again, of opportunities to really get into this industry. As an organization, again, I mentioned that we spun out of the growers piece, but we're really looking at everything from technology to First Nations stakeholders, to coastal communities, to education, to workforce development into this sector. And we ultimately, our aim is to be that voice and work collaboratively with members and our future members, depending on where you're at on the other side of the screen this morning, to build all of those pieces up. So Kenny, if you jump ahead again, that would be great. Or not, that's okay. So thank you. So ultimately here we've got from funding to farm to final product. What does that mean? PSG is here to assist you in every step of the way. We're optimistic and that we need to be the starting point. We're hoping, depending on where you're on the journey, to reach out, join us, and we can help you along that piece. Again, in collaboration with Cascadia this week, things like farming workshops and things. We envision, and we're working hard right now. We're developing content. We're putting together some research initiatives around, again, building out this entire sector. And as we get into more specific pieces with my colleagues here, they can speak much more eloquently to those defined opportunities within the space. But ultimately, we are, again, optimistic that you can start with us. And we take pride in, at this point in time, we are great connectors. And we don't necessarily have all the answers internally at this point in time, but we certainly are more than happy to connect you with those industry experts that we are getting connected into as we grow this organization. So Kenny, if you could jump ahead here again. And I think I actually just spoke to my next slide because it's around what do we do? And we've got tools, interesting right now. Again, if you take the farming perspective, there's a whole host of opportunities within the technology sector, whether that's assisting farmers in gaining efficiencies and things that might have been and are continually being done manually around the world. Can we bring British Columbia's innovation to this sector? Resources, we're here as people, as a group, and again, we can connect you into some of those other organizations. And finally, I just alluded to a few minutes ago, the connections. One of the things I find most exciting about being in this industry is everybody globally, it's a very collaborative bunch. You will find information. People are very willing and eager to talk and share their stories. We just think there's so much room in this area that we're lucky as the starting point, albeit sometimes we'll be competitors in that space. People are willing to share their story and get all of us on the journey. So we're thrilled. I will wrap this up later at the end of this session, but I'm thrilled to turn it over to my colleagues at this point in time to really get into a bit of a deep dive here. And again, if there's questions along the way, feel free to put them in the chat. We're happy to answer those. We're going to run through our overview here, and then we're hoping to have some meaningful dialogue through a questions and answer period at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Jennifer Woodland, and we can go from there. Thanks, Jennifer.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I am so excited to be a part of the Seaweed Growers Association. As Marcus stated, it's a really diverse group. Every time we get on a Zoom or a call to talk, the conversation just keeps going and going because we all come from a variety of backgrounds. So we're all learning from each other, which is what you want. And so I'm Jennifer Woodland. I am the CEO of New Chalmers Seafood. We are a fully Indigenous owned, fully integrated seafood company. We have interest in commercial fishing with license and quota. We own majority share of St. Jean's Smokehouse and Cannery. Many of you might be familiar with that. So we have access to value-added processing, primary processing. We have experience in retail with our Gratitude Seafood brand, Raincoast Trading brand, and the St. Jean's brand. And we also have interest in aquaculture. So one thing about our company where it's Indigenous owned is it's a really values-based company. Everything we do I have to vet through our shareholding nations and make sure they pass the 3 guiding principles test. And so for the Newfoundland people, the 3 guiding principles are Hishisawak, meaning everything is one, everything is connected. And therefore, any impact you have on one thing, you have to look beyond that to make sure that you're not having an impact on anything else, unless it's a positive impact. And then there's Aesop, which is a greater respect with caring, and Uathuk, which is taking care with a modern approach. And so when you work for a values-based company that looks not just ahead to the future and, you know, business planning 1, 5, 10 years, they look ahead 100 years, 7 generations from now. The activities that we're undertaking as a company, I'm always asked, well, where does this bring us 7 generations from now? And that's been a really inspiring and enlightening way to do business. And it really led us, in a moment, I'll talk about how it got us into kelp aquaculture. So not just am I the CEO of Newfoundland Seafood, I'm also chair of the Canadian Aquaculture Industry Alliance. So we look out for the interests of all membership across Canada for all species of aquaculture. And a little bit about myself, I'm originally from Newfoundland and I grew up in the commercial fishing family. And in 1991, 1992, when the moratorium on the cod came down, it had a dramatic impact, not just on my family and our business, not just on our town, but the whole and entire province. And I was in first year university at the time, and I remember thinking, wow, like, how are we going to feed the world? And this could be one of the ramifications of that, to lose a whole species. Cod to Newfoundland wasn't just a species that people fished, it was our currency, it was a big part of our culture. And it was a dramatic impact in that it didn't just hit the fishermen, it hit every single community and the widespread impact. And so when I was in university, I knew I wanted to do fisheries biology, but as a graduate program, then I entered into aquaculture and kind of dedicated myself to aquaculture as a means to feed the world in a sustainable manner. So Newfoundland Seafood hired me originally to look and help them develop aquaculture opportunities. And our shareholding nations, because they're treaty nations, had a lot of sites that they had on hold. And I kept thinking to myself, like, kelp, my kids eat kelp. There's kelp snacks in my house. They're not from Canada. Why is this? I go to the beach, there's kelp. Through a lot of my work in other areas of aquaculture, we talked a lot about integrative multi-trophic aquaculture, IMTA, and doing research about how you can co-produce finfish, shellfish, and kelp together. And I thought, wow, that's just such a marvelous opportunity to maximize the volume of products coming off of your site. And there's kelp again. So when we really started looking at opportunities for our shareholding nations, this was probably in 2017, I was kind of raising the kelp flag. Hey, let's talk about kelp. Well, what do we do with kelp? And the more research we did, the more it really fit with those 3 guiding principles. It was really good cultural fit. And also it was kind of a stepping stone to build capacity in aquaculture, as it still was a fit through IMTA with shellfish and finfish and other activities to grow the business, beginning with kelp. And so in 2018, we applied for an NSERC grant and were granted the funds to partner with North Island College to look at, okay, we know we want to grow kelp now, can we? And so we selected some sites that our First Nations had leases and popped some kelp in, and lo and behold, we were able to grow kelp. So it was during this time that I said, okay, well, now I've really got to do my homework on how do we do this here? What are the opportunities? What is going to be the end product? If we can grow the kelp, then what do we do with it? And I started attending every workshop on kelp that I can get my hands on. And it was really interesting because in 2018, there was 3 people in the room when I went to a kelp workshop. In 2019, it was standing room only. And here we are today, and I think there's over 700 registered for this network of Week of Seaweed. And it's really showing how the vast interest is just booming in kelp aquaculture, which is making me very excited. But it was at one of those workshops that I became introduced to Bill Collins. And I knew that our First Nations had sites and opportunity. I knew they had the boats and the resources and the human resources capacity. But Cascadia came with a bigger vision of how to grow it in a more meaningful way, in a quicker way. And, you know, NSLP is a very diversified company, and we're successful because we've been very smart to make partnerships with other companies who share our core values. We've had a lot of opportunities come our way that could have been very feasible, but if the core values weren't there and the respect for those 3 guiding principles, we don't take that opportunity and we don't sign on with that partnership. But we did the due diligence with Cascadia. They met all of our criteria. And 2 years ago, we signed an agreement with them and an MOU, and we were the first partner under Cascadia and created a model that they're now using with other First Nations. In order to get an aquaculture site leased in British Columbia, you need the consent of First Nations. So it makes business sense to work with First Nations at the onset of your business in any form of aquaculture. And then it really ties into reconciliation as well to help First Nations build economic opportunities. And so for us, this has been a really exciting project and a really exciting partnership because we're now in our second year of commercial harvest in partnership with Cascadia with 2 of our shareholding nations. So we can go to the next slide there. Thank you. So, you're going to hear me use the word balance a lot. So when you work for an Indigenous company, when you really get to know the culture, everything is about that balance. Everything is one, maintaining that balance. And the future of seafood, and I include kelp as a part of seafood, food from the sea, is going to be a balance of wild and farm. So right now, 50% of global seafood production for human consumption is farmed. So the future is that balance. And we knew early on that diversification was important, but what's also important is really to meet the needs of where consumers are going. Aquaculture in all of its forms is going to be an important pathway for the future for food security. Aquaculture is important not just for food security, but for food safety, for economic recovery, and for carbon reduction. The total amount of seaweed production, oh yeah, that's even on the side there, has tripled from 2000 to 2018. But where is Canada? Like, we have the largest coastline, and yet we should be seen as some of the major producers of seaweed, and we're not. So where is Canada? We have been lagging behind in production. Slide number, please. So, but there's hope. So just recently, the government of Canada committed to creating a blue economy strategy. So this is and I'm taking this right from their website. It is a strategic framework to guide future actions and investments that will help grow our ocean economy while advancing our conservation objectives. This strategy aims to harness opportunities on all 3 coasts and position Canada as a leader in the blue economy. So I take great hope in that. So right now, there's actually, the federal government is doing consultation on the blue economy strategy. I encourage you to look it up, answer the questionnaire, and have your input on where you want the blue economy to go. And that's by definition what the blue economy is, right? I work in a First Nations business, and I brought it to a couple of our shareholding nations and my colleagues. And I said, the federal government's talking about this blue economy strategy. And it came right back to me. It's like, what? We've always done that, created that balance of creating economic opportunities for our nations on the water in balance with conservation. This is how we live, blue economy. And I was like, that's just so fascinating. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to create new opportunities from our ocean resources, and kelp can play a major role in that. Slide 4, thanks. So let's talk about the opportunities. Canada's got the largest coastline in the world. 71% of the earth is covered by water. 3% of food comes from the ocean, and there's a 7 to 10% increase in global demand on seafood. So there's so much opportunity to grow this sector. Health Canada recommends that we improve our health in what we eat. We're recommended to eat 2 to 3 servings of seafood, food from the sea, a week. We don't. I think if we eat 1 or 2 a month, we're lucky. So there's so much opportunity to really grow this sector, just even domestically, by increasing our consumption of food from the sea. And there's a lot of interest in kelp products. More and more, it's becoming less of a foreign exotic food and becoming well understood as a very nutritious, locally sourced food. Like I said, my kids have been eating these dried kelp snacks that we buy at Costco for years, right? Like, it's not that foreign. I think we all like sushi, but there's so much more to kelp than just dried nori as well. So when we look at opportunity, so much has changed since the pandemic in terms of consumer trends and where consumers are looking for their food. And this is where kelp really ticks a lot of these boxes. So if we look at consumer research now, really people are always talking about sickness and viruses, and health is forefront in people's mind. And you can't even find a more nutritious food source than kelp. It is so high in so many minerals and nutrients. It's a powerhouse of nutrients. People want affordable food. People want Canadian source food. That's a kind of a food safety, but also a support local initiative. They want healthy food, of course. They're much more open now to shelf stable food, kind of the pandemic effect of seeing, empty shelves there last spring. They want to make sure that they have, nutrient packed food in a shelf stable form. They want sustainable food. And that sustainability has always been around in consumers, but it's really getting fine-tuned and focused now to focus on carbon footprint. And as we know, kelp sequesters carbon. Not only is it a low carbon way of producing food, it actually is the reverse. It takes carbon out of the environment and actually benefits the environment in carbon sequestering. And specific to kelp for opportunity, we're just seeing this huge rise in plant-based diets. My brother's now 2 years in as being a vegan. And so there's so much more opportunity in this rise. There was a commercial on last night, half beef, half plants. Like we're just seeing this surge of opportunity. And this is just in food. When I look at kelp, there's so many more opportunities. We get calls all the time to the association from cattle growers, from research looking at, can we feed this to cattle and reduce their carbon footprint? It is nutritious for the cows. We're looking at it as a pet food alternative to add more nutrients to pet food. And I was a guest speaker at the BC Aquaculture Innovation Awards a couple of weeks ago, and 2 of the finalists were using kelp to make plastic alternatives, compostable plastic. So when you look at the opportunities, every time we open a door, it's like, wow, kelp can solve that problem. Wow, kelp can solve that problem. It's absolutely mind-blowing. But with every opportunity comes challenges, and the biggest challenge is really keeping up with the opportunity, making sure that we can get applications processed in time to meet the demand. We need investment in innovation, and that's really where it's going to be huge. If I look back at where Canada is lagging in seafood, we used to be the #1 leader in seafood development and production. We're now 8th. I'm hopeful that this blue economy strategy that we all really put forward, we want to be the leader again, take our rightful place at that podium as the #1 seafood, and making sure that kelp's a big part of that. But a big part of that is going to be investment in innovation, the technologies required to come up with these new product development, the technologies required to put in the IMTAs and product development, and also in marketing. Like I said, while it's becoming less exotic for most of us to eat kelp, there's still a lot of people out there that aren't fully aware of just, A, they're probably eating a lot of kelp and don't realize it, but also how much more they can be eating. And what we need, we can go to the next slide, to achieve this is a federal champion. So the Canadian Aquaculture Industry Alliance, as I mentioned, I am chair of that group, and also the Fisheries Council of Canada came together and created a strategy. And I encourage everyone to go online and look up this report. It lays out the vision, and it lays out the steps and the goals of how Canada can achieve that, becoming the leader of food coming from the sea. And not just extracting more volume, it's not always about that. I know in commercial fisheries, we've kind of plateaued on how much volume we can take from the ocean, but how do we extract more value? And how do we support the aquaculture sector? And you probably heard Bill Collins talking earlier in the week about the tripod, the 3 legs of aquaculture: finfish, shellfish, and kelp. And if you kick one leg off a tripod, the rest of us fall. And it's really about supporting the sector as a whole to support all of us. There's so much to be learned from each other. There's so much support that can happen for each other. And really, if we want to grow to the level that I think we can in Canada, IMTA is going to be a huge opportunity. We're talking to other farmers about, when your tenure is being fallowed, can we use it for kelp? Like, there's just so much collaboration. But this blue economy strategy was put together to lay out as a part of the communication back to government as, here, we know how to do this, and here's the vision. Next slide, please. So this is a part of the vision that came out of this report, but what's really important to know is that Canada is signatory to a high-level panel for sustainable oceans economy. The ocean policy is made up of world leaders, including our Prime Minister, and is among 14 heads of government to develop, catalyze, and support solutions for ocean health and wealth in policy, governance, technology, and finance. And there it is again, that balance, creating wealth from the ocean while balancing the conservation efforts. They created a report, and the report is, and I encourage everyone to look up this report too, A Sustainable Ocean Economy for 2020, approximating its benefits and cost. This report states that for every $1 invested into the ocean of sustainably sourced ocean food, you get a return of $10 in benefits. Benefits for health, benefits in the economy, and benefits in the environment. Nearly half of the ocean employment right now comes from creating food from the ocean. So, you know, Canada can be the global leader. Canada is signed on to understand how investment in the ocean gives a very positive return. And we need that champion. Kelp kind of falls into this unusual land of, is it a plant? Therefore, are you agriculture, or are you a seafood because you come from the sea? But right now it's regulated by the provincial government. It is, and as far as I'm concerned, it's food from the sea, but seafood is lacking a federal champion. We have regulators, but we don't have anybody standing up and really touting all the opportunities in the seafood sector, the programs necessary to support the seafood sector, and a promotional. If you look at agriculture, you know, the CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, they regulate the industry, but then the Ministry of Agriculture supports it and promotes it and helps you with your marketing and branding. And really, as a part of this whole strategy going forward, we really want to identify a champion for this sector in aquaculture, because we know we can take our place as the leader of seafood development, and we know kelp is going to be a huge part of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hi, I'm Bruce. I'm what you call the food sector advisor with the PSGA. My background comes from seafood as well. I was the executive vice president of a value-added seafood company out here in British Columbia. And for many, many years, was dealing with supply chain issues, creating and developing products to move into the Canadian, US, and European markets. So I come from an understanding of what it takes to source out raw material, create products, and sell them through the marketplace in a fashion that, on behalf of the company, was repeatable, scalable, and provided growth that sustained us for many, many years. Over the last 5 years, I've actually been involved with the plant-based space in terms of the CPG sector. And that was really interesting to see how much change had happened in the growth of plant-based products and the emergence of our changing diets. And, it still came down to, though, the importance of taste and the importance of, hitting the tone with the resellers and the distribution and all of these fundamentals. I had the opportunity to actually work with Cascadia a little while back, and this just exploded my mind on what was going on in the seaweed space. And I inquired and had the opportunity to meet Mark, and told him a little bit about my interest in what was going on here, and I'd like to contribute. I really wanted to participate in this. So he said, sure. And seeing the incredible talent of the board and again, just the energy and passion in the sector was something I'd never seen before. Being involved in highly competitive, everybody's involved in trying to get their market share and so forth. I noticed this incredible collaboration, great team people that were coming on board with us as well. And I just felt this is, the new format of how businesses, and in particular in the food space, are going to develop. It was a great model. So I wanted to get involved and, as I say, contribute. I had some previous work in environmental impact assessments. I was always very concerned about sustainable seafood. And a lot of the discussion points that Jennifer brought up just resonated with me too. So that's how I got involved. And through that, Mark has mentioned this, the collaboration on an international level to get information relevant to what we're trying to do out here with the PSGA, certainly Cascadia. If those of you have followed Seaweed Days over the course of this week, it's just amazing, from culinary people, government. There's just such a compilation of interest around what can be built out here in British Columbia in terms of the seaweed industry. And the PSGA, what we're formulating and building, I think is going to, as Mark said, be this unified voice, where we can be able to bring relevancy to the concerns, decisions, and issues for those that want to get into this sector. Next slide, please, Kennedy. So the remarkable potential, these are a few of the, the impressive broad range of product applications that seaweed. You're not going to find, too many raw materials are going to be able to contribute to so many other types of sectors. And the reason we're focused a little bit more on the human, food element right now is that edible seaweed, it contributes 85% of the global seaweed production. So we felt, well, we're going to focus on that. But that doesn't by any means mean that the association is going to be looking at all of these different types of drivers. It's as I say, it's just remarkable, the use of this raw material. It's a true superfood. I mean, being a food guy, a food person, it really is. I've heard that term, superfood, but seaweed truly has so many utilities. This nutrient dense, you've heard it on trend plant-based demand, and coming again from the plant-based sector. I'm just so impressed with how many different avenues you can go with seaweed in terms of finished products in the frozen category, the shelf stable category, fresh category. It's just truly amazing. And again, going back to my background, it's climate friendly source of food. We've heard this all week, it lowers the environmental footprint. And I think all of us as consumers, as resellers, as growers, that's kind of a good honor badge to be participating in. So again, at the PSGA, combining all of these various elements, we're building information, providing insights, looking at current market activity, building those professional connections with the food industry, infrastructural needs, and other associations. This is what I really enjoy. Welcome the opportunity to have conversations with us, and whereby we can accumulate this and categorize this information for our members. Next slide, please. So food as an opportunity, edible seaweed. I love graphs because if it's going upward and it's exponential, you take note. What's going on here? I'm certain that if I was to look at the beef graph over the last 5 years, it would have a different sort of trajectory. Per capita, you have to look at what isn't going into, an estimation of growth and what areas are stagnating. This is very important when you're building businesses out and being involved in reselling and so forth. What is trending? So, with these exponential predictions, I think you have to look and address the growing consumer demand and how, as an industry, are we going to capture it? As Jennifer pointed out, there takes a lot to, actually capture the demand. We're sensing there's an incredible interest and pulse, but you got to get that awareness and convert that demand, and you have to build the industry in order to supply that. And again, what I like about our feelings at the PSGA, we want to be a part of that. You know, we want to be a catalyst. We want to help you face some of those challenges, and also provide that information on, you know, what is it going to take for you actually to enter into the marketplace. Next slide, please. I love this one because it gives us a very clear indication of the need for domestic production. And, you know, after experiencing, you know, consumers have been concerned about food security. You know, they look at labels. Where is this manufactured? You know, what kind of quality control is there? You know, that's a long supply chain when you're importing from China. You know, how do I feel more assured? So again, I see a huge opportunity for British Columbia to develop, you know, domestic production for selling into the North American market. And this doesn't come without retaliation. So that's why we want to get going on things quick. It is there, and there's already, you know, existing market share, and I feel BC is, you know, very poised to take advantage of this. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but there are food systems. You probably have heard it, and there's been many wonderful discussions on this. But it's the nuts and bolts, let's just say, to get from sea to shelf to your plate. You know, this is sort of the general process that you go through from pre-production, which is all the preliminary work, down to consumption. And what's very important today is waste, packaging waste, food waste. You know, this whole combination is extremely important. And systems are within. You have marketing systems, social systems, economic systems, financial systems, government regulations, selling product, transportation. There's just a whole myriad in here, and there's issues within that. You have governance, seaweed production, stakeholders, financial constraints, licensing constraints. But at the end of the day, I see food systems starting to change, and it's changing from the very beginning. The importance of transparency. Where was this harvested? Was it done in an environmentally safe and sound way? I think seaweed is going to be demonstrating, you know, how things can be done in the future, and it is a marvelous model from my perspective. The old system it's now time to sort of rip the paper up and relook at it. And again, I'm just overwhelmed by the enthusiasm of the people, our current members, as well as those internationally. There's a real concerted effort to do this right, and it's fantastic. At the Food Systems Summit, powering the seaweed revolution for the transformational change in our food system. And that, to me, in a nutshell, is just marvelous, a marvelous mantra. Next slide, please. So as Jennifer pointed out, opportunities, I'm speaking a little bit more specifically with seaweed food systems, is very parallel. And to me, the first thing, as just going through some of those slides, is, you know, the domestic BC products, you know, they'll have greater quality, shorter supply chain issues. Knowing where that food, you know, has come from is definitely an area to build up, to ramp up, and to get things going there. Coming from the plant-based space, the positioning, it's on trend. You know, there is consumer preferences to this, and I can't help looking at all the beautiful pictures of the pristine waters of British Columbia, going all the way up the coast to Prince Rupert and all of our friends all over these communities. It highlights what we are out here. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to bring that into the food system now. The other thing is about the economic advantages too in the system. As you can see through that previous graph, the job creation, bringing skills into it, engineers, environmentalists, and the food people to actually manufacture the food, go out and resell it, and feel very proud of where that's come from. So that's how you start to build, a blue economy out here. And it's all impacting into the food system, which we're going to be redesigning ours out in British Columbia. There are always downsides to things, but I always like challenges. And I feel that we're resilient out here in BC, and certainly the PSGA, we're always up for, okay, we want to shoulder this with you. There's no question. You've heard about licensing, regulatory issues, complicated and lengthy. But when we get through those things, it's worthwhile. And I think the more voice, unified voice we have as an association on your behalf, the more we're going to see that we'll be able to challenge foreign processors, because there will be retaliations, but we're going to be prepared. And I think there's going to be a lot of positive upside with that. There is, as Jennifer even pointed out, end market demand creation needs to be developed. Consumer awareness. The supply end we have to work on, but we also have to shift this in the marketplace. New products coming from seaweed and kelp that consumers are going to latch on to this. Get the resellers very excited about their products and really challenge it out there. I think that needs to be done. I also believe with that, effective and scalable product development. We've got to look at, what the product market fits and product validation out there. We got to get people in to see what is on trend and how can seaweed be applied, to these new innovative food products. Logistics, transport, distribution networks need to be built. This is a whole system that will need to be done. Again, at the PSGA, we're optimistic though. We have, we're energetic and we want to support this through relevant information, key experts to help this process. We want to help our members and stakeholders and interested groups become resilient and face these challenges. That's what challenges are there for, to be overcome. So I'm optimistic. I'd like to introduce Kennedy next, one of our outstanding team members that I've learned a great deal. Just the high energy again, just I'm so enthusiastic about. So pass it on to you, Kennedy.
I'll have to unmute myself. Thank you so much, Bruce. I am so thrilled to be able to work with this team at Pacific Seaweed Growers Association. So we really are a volunteer army, and we come together because we're passionate about this industry. We know Canada can be a leader in the seaweed industry, and we recognize that there needs to be a voice, there needs to be this body that connects everyone together to help us overcome these barriers that are present. And so my current role at Pacific Seaweed Growers is the Director of Development, but my day job here is at Cascadia Seaweed as a project manager. But a little bit about my background, my seaweed journey didn't really start till about a year ago. And I was introduced to Bill Collins, the chairman at Cascadia Seaweed. And my formal training is in marine biology. And, there's always that looming thought of climate change. What can I do? And it's terrifying. And my whole life, climate change has always existed. It's just the reality. And it's always, I don't know what to do as an individual. And so when I met Bill Collins, I had never heard of seaweed farming at all. And I was so inspired. If you ever have the chance to talk to Bill, he will immediately inspire you. And after my conversation with him, couldn't get enough of it. I was researching, I was connecting with people, and that's where I was able to connect with Mark Smith at Pacific Seaweed Growers Association a year ago. And then the rest is history. And so I'll get a bit into what we've been working on this past year. So this past year, we established the Pacific Seaweed Growers Association in March 2020. So that's in the midst of the pandemic. So we're already in an economic crisis and we need a recovery solution, which is even more reason to be a part of Seaweed Growers Association. So we are announced during the seeding summit that Cascadia Seaweed hosted. And then from there, we connected and built the foundation. So we got together, we were deciding, okay, what are our values? What do we need to see? What does Canada need in order to be in the top as an industry leader in this sector? So from there, from that foundation, we started onboarding industry experts. So we have Jennifer Woodland, we have Bruce Wallinger, we have George Hansen, and just an incredible amount of collaborative support from volunteers who just want to see this industry just flourish. And it's the opportunities are endless, and there really isn't any sort of market development like this today. There's so many versatile products, as you've seen. It's so easy to start up. It's not super rocket science to start cultivating and growing. So this past year, I've really learned hands-on experience how to grow seaweed, and it is so adaptable and teachable. And so that's why we're also here, is to provide these education programs and to teach. And so what we've been really working on this year is connecting with members and listening to them and seeing what they want to see from us. What can we do to make us go forward and grow exponentially? So as we're coming into our second year of operations, I'll share with you, we have some exciting announcements of what to look forward to. So membership profiles, I'll elaborate a bit on this. We have interacted with all our members in a more of an informal basis and just trying to listen and hear. And so what you'll be seeing us coming out in the next couple months is a more formal case study. And so, or cases per profile. So we are really going to have a case for your membership, and we're going to understand what you need to succeed and what you exactly want to see. And so there'll be check-ins, and we're going to make sure that we help you execute your goals, because we're really only as strong as our connections and as our team. So then that gets into our training resources. So we're also developing training resources with one of our great members, M&P. So you'll be seeing these workshops coming up, especially on Indigenous awareness and relations. We're also we're working with another one of our members, the Pacific Coastal Computing Association, to develop these tools that can actually help our members expand their business. And then that leads me to my next point for industry research. We are currently working on a workforce development strategy for coastal British Columbia. So we're trying to engage and see and present this case that there is a way to move forward in this industry. Europe and China and Asian countries, they're so far ahead of us, and they already have these. And so that's why the Seaweed Growers Association is so important, because we need to develop a workforce development strategy for Canada that works for us, because it's going to look different. There's going to be similarities, but it's going to be different, and we need to do it for ourselves. And in addition to this report, we're currently working on a state of the industry report. So we know internally what things are looking like, and we're sharing and talking, but we don't have an actual document with this compiled research that we can share and to educate others what's actually happening around us. And then the engagement and communication piece, I'm actually going to pass on to our Director of Communications and Engagement, Jordan Hawkswell. So I'll let her talk a bit about this. With further ado, I'll introduce our next team member, Jordan.
Thanks, Kennedy. So yes, my name is Jordan Huxley. Hopeful, as I had noticed that there is a lot of resources like lacking in the industry for those of us looking to enter the sector in any real capacity. So like many of us, I have been navigating the barriers of licensing and startup costs, making connections, and learning about Pacific seaweeds. And I was delving into a lot of that, and I became really interested in sharing what I'd found, because as we all know, growing the sector to meet the needs of us all is really important for everyone's success. So here I am, I'm hoping to connect with all of you and provide resources and tools to support all of us in navigating those barriers. Everyone else has greatly touched on our goals for the PSGA, but I'll just quickly touch on some of the engagement plans that we've got over the next few months and beyond. So you can go to the next slide there, Kennedy. So we know that generating ocean-friendly jobs, green jobs, is a huge part of this, but so are making these key connections in the sector and building a strong and thriving community of growers. So we have, next slide there, Kennedy. We have started a blog, which is pretty exciting, where we'll be sharing a real range of topics and highlights in the industry. We've called it the Seaweed Industry Chronicles. And we want this to be a place where stories are told and member achievements are celebrated, and important and interesting information about seaweed and its role in all of this that we've talked about are detailed. Much like this whole Seaweed Days Festival did so well, we want to showcase the wide variety of threads that are weaving the industry together. The Chronicles are actually live as of today with our very first post, and you can find that on our website. And we'll be aiming to have new content each week for existing and future members. We'll also be starting a quarterly newsletter where you'll find industry information as well as other highlights and science and opportunities. And I really encourage you to sign up for that. You can also sign up on our website. And I think maybe we can pop that in the chat somewhere, which would be great. And lastly, I personally and all of us at PSGA would really like to hear from you as the growers and the enthusiasts who are in the nitty-gritty of it all. We want to know what you want to see, how we can support you, how can we grow this industry together, and how you prefer to receive information. All of that feedback would be amazing, and we can work for you. So you can add that into the chat box. I know we're running a little short on time, but we'll have some time for some questions at the end too. But my email was also there in the slides, and would love to hear from you about how we can provide you with the most relevant content for you. So that's it for me. I think we'll go back to Mark then.
I can't quite see if Mark's
Okay,
coming
there we
on.
go.
Oh, there we are.
I'm back. Sorry about that, everybody. We did that. We couldn't be seamless without a technology challenge. So we just
The anticipation.
exactly. So first and foremost, thanks to everybody. And we've managed to fill the time, but we're certainly looking forward to some questions here. But before we just quickly jump into that, I do want to put out there that, and we're going to put up, I think Kennedy's got a code here that thanks for joining us here today, but we're really looking forward to welcoming a whole host and a wide variety of new members here. So we're more than happy to offer up, and you can see on the screen there, we've got a sign me up. It's a pretty great code. So if you just go to seaweedgrowers.org, there's a number of categories. We realize that in these scenarios right now, everybody's at a different place in their journey. The starting point, just like Jordan did on her own accord a few months back, is you can actually just join as an individual. And we firmly believe that outside of all the initiatives and pieces that we're working for to try and drive this emerging industry sector forward, is we really need and are looking forward to sharing those conversations, hearing your stories, connecting you, providing the tools and the resources to really help you along that journey. So we're looking forward to that. So again, in the spirit of time, I know that we're there. And if we can't get to questions, if you've got any questions, please forward them on. Seaweed Growers, there's a form on there. My email, I think people's emails are currently around out there. We're more than happy to hear from you. We'll get back to you. We'll communicate with you and see how we can be of assistance here. So that would be great. Is there any questions out there, or did we? No, we took it right to the end. I'm looking at Aaron, who's the control of the chat.
Actually, we had a flood of questions for you guys. So there's definitely some interest in the Pacific Seaweed Growers Association from a variety of different levels, from different people in the supply chain. Now, Kennedy, earlier when we were chatting, you mentioned that there was an FAQ on the website. If I was to forward these questions to you, would you put answers to them on the FAQ page?
That is correct. So all your questions will be recorded and we will respond to all of them in the FAQ, and we'll email that out to you. And especially if you sign up for a newsletter, we'll make sure that you are aware when those are put up on our website.
Yeah, lots of really great questions. So I implore everyone to head on over to the Seaweed Growers Association website and to sign up for the newsletter and to keep an eye on the FAQ. Here from the headquarters of Seaweed Days, we have another session starting in 1 minute, and we've got to make the change. We've got to make the trend. Mark, are you arguing with me?
No, I'm not arguing with you, but I just want to, in 30 seconds or less, jump in and announce that Rena, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, Chavoski is the winner of the Taste Local block. So if we could get we just need your email address, and then we'll get the particulars offline to make sure we get that out to you. So on behalf of the seaweed growers, and thank you to Cascadia for organizing this.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So winner, please send me your contact information so we can get that over to you. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Great.
Thanks, everyone.